Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Louis Shandor, the content director for LogiPharma Digital Supply Chain Connect, the invitation-only event for life science supply chain digitalization leaders. I'm thrilled to be here today, collaborating with Blue Yonder, and more importantly, engaging with our distinguished guest, Shirell James. Before we dive into our conversation, Shirell, would you mind just kicking things off by introducing yourself?
Yes, great. Thanks, Louis. So my name is Shirell James, and I joined Blue Yonder last year. I came via the One Network acquisition, and One Network was a solution that was quite heavily focused on the pharma supply chain and how we can support pharma industry in their, how we can support the pharma industry as they move through the transformation into kind of biologics, which is what we're going to talk about today. And my role at Blue Yonder is I'm the Vice President of Solution Strategy for the Blue Yonder Network.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, Shirell, I'd love to just understand from your perspective, what do we see happening in the pharma industry today?
A lot. I think there's huge changes in the pharma industry, really, which was triggered by COVID, and the need to get vaccines to the market quickly, not just any vaccine, but the new mRNA vaccines. So I think over the last 5 years, we've seen a huge investment in biologics as a result of that. So companies recognizing that they're able to get these kind of next generation drugs to market quite quickly. So Novartis, for example, recently invested 300 million to expand its biologics development and manufacturing in EMEA. AbbVie invested 223 million to expand its facilities in Singapore. So it's a huge investment. And this trend will continue. So there's a recent report by KPMG, and they project the annual growth rate of biologics to be between 11 to 15%, and that it'll be a market that's worth 2 trillion by 2040. So that's huge. And then coupled with that, we also see a lot of these big pharma companies partnering with AI companies on how they can go through clinical trials more quickly. So analyzing the data quickly, getting through clinical trials more quickly. And I think as a result of that, we can expect to see all the new drugs hitting the market much more quickly. And coupled with that, because of the specialized nature of these drugs, the manufacturing process is very different to more traditional medicines, because it's made from their organic materials, and the cold chain and distribution storage requirements are very different. It's very temperature sensitive, and the need for the pharma companies to adapt really quickly as these new drugs come to market. We see pharma companies move into much more externalized supply chains. So using CDMOs, contract manufacturers, pharma companies can really quickly flex their manufacturing capacity. And then by using specialist 4PLs for distribution, they can trust those companies to get those drugs through the supply chain quickly, because short shelf life, temperature sensitive, without investing in specialized equipment or specialized warehouses.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for kind of going into such detail. That's really interesting to understand what's kind of going on then. To that point, I'd love to just understand a little bit more then about what impact do these changes kind of have on the pharma supply chain?
Yes. So as I was mentioned in the first part of this series, because biologics are manufactured using living organisms, they have a much more complicated manufacturing process, and they require specialized facilities and strict quality control. And this makes them more expensive. So they're more expensive because of the way they're made. They have longer production times for the way they're made. And because of their specialized nature, there's less manufacturing sites that can manufacture them. So there's quite often capacity bottlenecks in the biologics manufacturing process. They also have very specific cold chain requirements. Some vaccines need to be kept at minus 70 degrees centigrade. So you can imagine through a manufacturing and distribution process how difficult that is, because you're going to have to take it out of cold storage at some point to do something with it. And because some of these are you're injecting into people, it's really important that you're sure that the batch is viable, that it hasn't come into ambient temperature range for too long, and that it's still a viable drug for the patient. And then there's strict requirements around quality. They're new drugs, and so there's lots of FDA requirements and other requirements around quality. And so, as we discussed in the first session, because it's externalized, we've got contract manufacturers, we've got third-party distributors, we've got external warehouses. For a pharma company to manage that, it becomes really difficult. So how do you maintain visibility and control over your external supply chain when it's so much more complicated? And so without solutions in place to manage this, what happens is it drives up cost. It reduces yield. You're not in control of the quality and the temperature. And ultimately that impacts the patient in terms of availability of those drugs. And the final challenge is sustainability. I think it's interesting when you listen to leaders in the pharma supply chain talk about sustainability, is they want to meet sustainability targets. It's one of the key targets they have. But when you're faced with the decision of getting the drug to the patient versus carbon emissions, what trade-off do you make? It's someone's life versus the planet. So you're making a big decision between the two, and I think that's also a big challenge for pharma companies and chief supply chain officers today.
Fantastic. No, thank you for summarizing that. I think, it is a really interesting time when we're just existing, in a certain macro environment where you are seeing the cost pressures are increasingly high, how you're justifying things like sustainability in light of that. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
How then can Blue Yonder enable transformation across the pharma ecosystem?
So last year, Blue Yonder acquired One Network, which is now known as the Blue Yonder Network. And the Blue Yonder Network takes an outside-in approach to supply chain. So for 20 years, we've been helping companies get visibility and control of what is happening outside the four walls of the organization. And so if you think about what I described earlier, that because it's becoming very externalized all the way through the process, multi-stages of manufacturing into distribution, all external, then you really need a network to get you outside of your four walls to get control. So what we always recommend is to start by getting visibility and control over the external supply chain. So that could be drug substance into drug product, seeing what is moving between those different stages of manufacturing, what the CMOs are actually manufacturing, so stages of manufacturing, the quality, the temperature, then getting visibility to the shipments that the 4PLs control. And so where are those batches? Again, what's the temperature? So you can track that temperature throughout the whole process, and what inventory is sitting in 3PL warehouses, distributors. So it's really important, first of all, to get that control and visibility, which is what the Blue Yonder network does through collaboration across a multi-tier external supply chain. And then I think also planning requires a different approach. Planning traditionally is enterprise centric. So when I plan, I look at it from inside my four walls. But because the pharma supply chain is becoming externalized, is how do I plan across those external organizations? So how do I plan across my external contract manufacturers in terms of what I need them to manufacture, but what capacities they have available? How do I plan and execute with my logistics providers so that they know when to go and pick up batches, which are short shelf life, short lead time, temperature controlled? They know when to go pick it up and then get it to its destination. and how do I plan what is actually, what inventory I have in my supply chain in general. And then I think the third key piece is having AI to monitor everything that's going on. So I've got my visibility, I've got my control, but now I need to make better decisions. So I need to, if something is happening in manufacturing, that means I'm not going to get the yield I expected. How do I replan? If I've got products going out of temperature range, how do I fix that further in the supply chain? If I've got products that are late in transit, what do I need to do to expedite it to get to a patient on time, for example? So that's what the Blue Yonder network enables, is that visibility and control, being able to plan and execute across the external supply chain, all the way from manufacturing through to distribution, and then using AI to help the planners make faster and better decisions. And then the final piece of the puzzle is sustainability. So remember I said that you have to make a trade-off. Do I get the product to the patient, or do I minimize carbon? So if you're talking about something personalized, like a radioligand therapy drug, I'm going to put it on a private jet if I need to get it to the patient. So how do you make those trade-offs? So being able to, this is where the AI comes in, looking at what's the best option. So how do I get products to where they need to be on time without making decisions that are going to impact sustainability targets?
Great. Fantastic. Thank you for summarizing that. So how can then pharma companies embark on this need for accelerated digital transformation?
So what we are seeing with the companies that we work with is starting with the contract manufacturers. So obviously the manufacturing process is the start of the process, and the one that has I would say the more complicated processes that it needs to track through that manufacturing process. So I think step one would be to get that visibility. So connecting with the contract manufacturers, and drug substance contract manufacturers, drug product, packaging. So connecting with those contract manufacturers and suppliers, so you get visibility of the manufacturing process, so that you know that you're maximizing the yield and minimizing the cost in that particular process. And that's fairly straightforward to do with the Blue Yonder network, because we already have a network of contract manufacturers that are available to pharma companies. If you join the network, you get access to those contract manufacturers and suppliers that are already there. So I'd say that is step one, is to do the contract manufacturing. Step two would then be to move into downstream distribution, so connecting the batch release from the contract manufacturer into that logistics process, a collaboration with the 4PLs on moving the drugs from the CMOs to their destination, whether it's another CMO or it's a distributed warehouse, or it even could be straight to a clinic or hospital. So connecting in that downstream distribution part of the supply chain. And then I would say the third stage would be to then capture all that cold chain data from across that end to end. So you get a full picture of cold chain temperature deviations all the way through that process, from drug substance to drug product into distribution, final mile. So I think, that's what we're seeing companies doing, the kind of journey they're going on. And then adding in the more advanced things like the sustainability versus cost trade-off, risk management. So looking at external risks in the supply chain, and the more advanced AI capabilities.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much, Shirell, for sharing your insights. For everyone listening, if you're eager to learn more, whether it's about building connected, sustainable pharma supply chains, the power of AI enhanced planning, or how Blue Yonder can support your digital transformation journey, LogiPharma Digital Supply Chain Connect is happening in Montreux and is the place to do it. So please do get in touch. Thank you.